You know, many years ago, I was lucky enough to meet the brilliant director. Take two. Many years ago, I was lucky enough to meet the brilliant film director, Billy Wilder. And many of you have been with me on this long journey of our wonderful community here on our channel. Well, you will remember some of the stories. I couldn't quite believe meeting him, you know, if I'm honest, because, you know, he was just one of those people that every film he made was brilliant, wasn't it? Everything from Double Indemnity to Some Like It Hot. And this particular movie, Sunset Boulevard. Now, as I say, it was a fluke meeting. It was just outside the National Film Theatre on the South Bank. And I hadn't been in London long. And you know, when you're wandering around trying to get your bearings and you think, where am I, you know? But you find things, you think, oh, I've heard of this place, you know? And suddenly I saw this man sat outside on a bench, a cold, wet afternoon, with a pork pie hat on. I thought, that looks like Billy Wilder. It turned out to be, and we ended up chatting for over 2 hours. He seemed thrilled to have the conversation, and I was absolutely delighted that he shared so many wonderful stories of Hollywood with me, working with all the big names and the big greats, you know. And it was interesting because the film theatre were doing a sort of retrospective of his movies and stuff like that. And I said, oh, you know, do you get excited by that? And he said, no, not to be honest, no. He said, I'm looking at trying to get funding for a movie of, you know, what he was trying to get made at that point. And I thought, Billy Wilder needs to get funding for a movie. I mean, surely people would want to work with him. And he said, no, the new generation, it's what you've done, say, in the last 2 years, not what you did in the last 30 or 40 years. A really telling sign about even then, ageism was just everywhere, wasn't it? You know what I'm saying, chums? But this particular story, it's a little bit different today. I wanted to share with you simply because it just goes to show how out of touch the people that are running supposedly things that are meant to entertain us truly are. Let me explain. Morning, nice to see you. You all right? Thank you so much for your time as ever, and lovely to see you all. You know, it's interesting, as I say, Sunset Boulevard, 75 years old, can you imagine? And I remember Billy Wilder saying, you know, that he tried to get Mae West and 1 or 2 other actresses, and Gloria Swanson apparently was just thrilled to get the role. You know, she wanted to carry on working, and he said that she was an absolute delight, but nothing like the character whatsoever. Simply because, you know, he said she lived in the moment. And I remember him telling me that she'd spent millions of pounds in the 1920s. And I remember thinking, how could you possibly do that in the 1920s? Gloria Swanson did. She had a very colourful life. And for my generation, I think I first remember seeing her on a late night re-showing of a movie of Airport 75. And I think I saw it in a magazine and they said, this is a great star. And I'd never heard of it. You know, you're a kid, right? So you go, oh, right, you know, and you look her up. Now, what's interesting is, as I said, they've decided over at CBS to celebrate the fact that Sunset is 75 years old. They're now part of the parent company, Paramount, so it makes perfect sense. And they've done it and cleaned it up, and it's now in wonderful, sparkling, whatever it is, 444 HD. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, and they did a wonderful segment of an interview. It featured everybody, including the latest incarnation of Norma Desmond, Nicole Scherzinger, who, as I pointed out, didn't exactly bring home the bacon while appearing on Broadway. Also, a quick snatch of an interview with the celebrated composer, Lord Andrew Lloyd Webber. And this woman, Nancy Olson, the only surviving original cast member from the original movie. At 97 years old, still looks fabulous, still looks sharp, and really had some wonderful stories to tell, particularly how she enjoyed kissing the co-star, William Holden. That is, of course, until his wife came onto the set. She said at 21 years old, it was just an absolute delight, as you can imagine. But here's where it gets interesting, because I have many sources, as you can imagine, working in television. I actually worked for CBS myself for a while when it was down at 57th Street, I think. And the bottom line is about this, is it tells you everything you need to know just about how out of touch the audience are watching something like CBS. The average age of the viewer of CBS is over 50 years old. So you would think they will be interested in more of that, right? No. What's interesting is they decided, and this is the high sort of head honchos, of course, behind the scenes of that, to basically say, well, you know, we're going to put out an extended version of that particular interview. No, not with the wonderful Nancy Olson, where she would have had incredible stories of the golden age of Hollywood. No, of Nicole Scherzinger, right? That's because the staff are around about 30, 35, and they may have bought the Pussycat Dolls when they were 15, part of which she was a member. You get the picture. And the reason why I highlight this is, television is dying in its natural form that you and I remember watching. But it's ridiculous to think, isn't it, that that particular video did incredibly well, and the person that they have an interview with, you would have thought they may have wanted to extend that and put it out there and let the world see. What was fascinating is when I contacted my colleagues at CBS, they said, oh, we're thinking about that. Thinking about it. The only surviving member of one of the most iconic movies of the last 75 years, and they're not quite sure. Now, when you think about it, and I've often said this here on the show, Chums, and you look at stuff like that, you think television's dying, and then you wonder why. And then you see situations like this. Anybody else agree with me that you would have loved to have seen more of the wonderful actress at 97 years old that should still be given her chance to shine in the spotlight, rather than equally the beautiful and talented Nicole Scherzinger? But Nicole's still got a long way to go to recapture all of that spotlight of Nancy. Anybody else agree? I'd love to know exactly what you think to this particular report, as ever, in the comments below. Have you seen Sunset Boulevard? Do you re-watch it? And what's your favourite line? I think mine are, I am big. It's the pictures that got small. It never gets old. Neil Sean in the very heart of London.